Okay guys, welcome back. This is Professor Serrano-Correa. This is Unit 2, Lesson 7. It says it's called Introduction to UIKit, but I did an Introduction to UIKit back in, there were about 4 videos if you remember. We added labels and text boxes and a button to a window, and so I'm going to refer back to those videos. I'm still going to go through this particular presentation, but I want to refer back to the videos so you can take a look at how and review what we covered then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the lesson in your book and just make sure that I cover everything that they have on here. So referring back to UIKit, remember that this is a foundational framework for building and managing user interfaces. The UIKit defines how you display information to the user and how you respond to the user interactions and system events. So we get to display objects like a button, then we get to figure out how do we want to respond to the person clicking that object, which is the system event. The UIKit framework provides all the pieces that you need to build and manage an iOS application. It includes definitions for all user interface objects like text boxes and labels and buttons, and the event handling system that responds to user input, and the entire model that allows apps to run in iOS. Okay, so let's talk about common system views. The foundational class for all visual elements defined in UIKit is the UI view. A view is a clear rectangular shape that can be customized to display anything on the screen. For example, text, images, lines, and graphics are all created using instances of UI view. The UIKit defines dozens of special UI view subclasses. For example, the UI label. Okay, almost all the screens in an app consist of many views, which together make up a view hierarchy. So all screens in an app consist of many views. So these are different views. We have a navigation view, and here we have a tab bar view. All these put together make up what we call the hierarchy, the view hierarchy. So here we have, when we add the navigation view and the tab bar view, and here we add a table with all kinds of things like labels and images, and then when we put it all together, we have it all nice and assembled. Views are often nested, as in this picture shown here. A view that's contained in another view is called a child view. So a child view, for example, if you look at here, we have, this is a table, and this table is holding the different times in Tokyo, New York, and each of these cells holds, so basically what you have here is each cell in this list is a child view of the table. So each cell is a child view of the table. And then you have a label here that displays a city name, and this cell is the parent to this label. This cell is a parent to this image here that changes with the time. So in object-oriented programming, we have something called parent and child. So you have parent and child, and the child basically receives all the properties of the parent. Okay. So to display a view on the screen, you need to give it a frame. And the frame consists of the size, the position, and then what you want to do is you want to add it to the view hierarchy. The area within the view is its bounds. A view is transparent by default, so you'll also need to set a background color. And then these here are all the different attributes of a view. So here you have the size, position, background color, and then you have something called a tag, and a tag basically just numbers the number of views that you have or the position of the view on screen. So if you have multiple views on your screen, then you would number these. So as you learn about the different views, you want to think about apps that you use and which views might be used to create their interfaces. And this is what your lab is going to be about. So first of all, let's just take a UI labels. We've done UI labels before. It contains static text. The text cannot be changed by the user. And so, for example, when we look at this window, the sound window in app settings of a phone or an iPad, for example, vibrate is a label, ringer is a label. This here that's in orange is a label, outline sounds and vibration patterns is a label. And then when you have labels, you have the different settings, which we've also played with of the label. And if you want to know more about the settings, you can go back to those lesson 1.8 videos. Okay, so all the properties for labels, buttons, and text boxes we played with, and I just want you to go back to that video and check those out and try them out yourself by creating a new Xcode application. So here we have UIImageView, and an image view displays an image or an animated sequence of images. Some people confuse the image view with the image itself, but what you want to think of it is just like a label displays text, an image view displays an image. This is the properties of your image view. In your book, you have the documentation for all these views and controllers that they talk about in this lesson. This one is text view. So text view just allows you to enter text, multiple lines of text. And they also support the scrolling and editing of the text. So you will typically use a text view when you display large amounts of text, such as here in the notes application or in the body of an email message. And these are the properties, or some of the properties for text view. UIScrollView is using when you want to add scroll bars to your window. So if you have stuff that's going to go outside the boundaries of your window, you want to add a scroll view. UITableView, again looking at the sounds application, here each one of these is a cell of a table. So these are cells of a table right here, right here, right here. And let's see what your book says about table view. A table view presents data in a single scrollable column of rows and sections, allowing users to navigate easily through groups of information. Table views are an excellent format for displaying and editing hierarchical list of information. For example, the Mail application uses a table view to display email messages. Okay, let's take a look at Toolbar. So Toolbar is typically at the bottom of your window, and the user can select a button or a tool to perform an action within a given view. These are the properties. You can configure the toolbar itself, or you can configure the bar items, these items right here, it displays. Each bar item is going to consist of a title and an image and can be enabled or disabled programmatically. Okay, the next one is UINavigationBar, which is always at the top of your window. And the navigation bar tells us where we're at, what application we're in, and what part of the application. So this is the settings application, and we're in sounds of the settings application. This here is the title. I think that's all. Oh, and also it talks about in your book how there is a back button, and so this whole thing here where you have the little arrow with the word settings, that's your back button, and there can also be a forwards button, and then of course this is the title. Okay, UITabBarController. A tab bar provides easy access to different views in an application. It displays multiple tab bar items. So these are the tab bar items. And it has an icon image and it has a text. You'll use tab bars in your application to organize information by a specific feature or task. The most common way to use a tab bar is with the tab bar controller, which holds a property of each view controller that represents each scene you want presented in the tab bar. When the user taps an item, a new view related to the new task is displayed. So if I tap this, I'm going to get a whole new view. So this will go away and I'll have a whole new view that's related to this item here. Tab bars are frequently used in apps that present multiple workflows or courses of action. So each of this is a different workflow. So if I go to games, then it's going to show me a list of games available for me to purchase. If I go to search, then it's going to show me a, I don't remember what it shows me. I don't know. It might be a text box that comes up that I can search for a specific application. Okay. So those were views. This is going to talk about controls. So in this section, in the last section, we looked at common views which display information to the user. But we also need to look to see how do we respond to the user. So this is in, these are tools in UIKit called controls. And it basically tells the application what to do. We did this also in lesson 1.8 when we we set up a IB action. I don't know if you remember, an interface builder action. And that interface builder action responded to a specific control event like pressing a button. So what did we want to do when that button got pressed? And I think if you remember when we pressed the button, I think it displayed something on a label. Can't remember. So here's a button, UI button. These are separate buttons here, 3 separate buttons. Users of iOS devices can initiate a control event with the tap of a button. So when we have an object, we have events that happen on that object. When you set up a button, you give it a title or an image that conveys what the button will do. Here we have both. the appearance of the button changes with different states of being. Like if I tap on the button, if I leave my finger on the button, if I lift my finger up, that's all going to have different states of being tapped. The primary control event is triggered when the user releases a button after tapping it. Buttons can also execute code at different stages of a tap, such as when the user first touches the button, or holds down the button, or cancels the tap by dragging their finger outside of the frame before lifting their finger. Okay, the next one is UI segment control. So we have segments. Segments are, if you think of them, they're kind of like arrays. So this is segment, the first segment is segment 0, segment 1 and 2. This is the first segment, second segment, third segment. They operate like buttons. So if I click on map, it'll do one thing, transit will do something else. These are the properties of my segmented control. So your book says that segmented controls execute code when the controller's value changes. The value represents which segment of the control is selected. And over here, notice it says segment 0 is your first segment. These are the properties of something different, not this one. But the title is called first, so if it was this one, the title will be called map. Okay, the next one is text fields. A text field allows the user to input a single line of text into an application. You'll use them to gather a small amount of text and to perform some action based on that text. So I'll enter the word John, and then there'll be a button, maybe, for example, like when you enter contact names, you would enter their name and their telephone number, and then you press save or done, and it then stores that information for you. And then for your text boxes, you have the option to have it blank, or you can have some text that is dimmed, like this one, where it says optional, and then as you type the middle name, then this optional word goes away. The next thing we have is UISlider. You've seen this a lot. The UISlider is, you've seen it to dim your sound or dim the brightness of your screen. And so you have a value that you set it to, and this is where you want it. This is your default value. So for your dimmer, it's going to start in the middle, and this is the min and the max value, how far you can go, how low and how high you can go. And sliders allow users to make smooth and gradual adjustments to a value. So here I talked about volume, screen brightness, which we talked about, and also for color. You've used them for color values. Okay, and then we have switch. So switch lets the user to turn an option on and off. And again, you can decide if you want to start, if you want it to begin with the option off or the option on. So you decide what the default is, and then the user can then go in and change it. The sliders execute codes that toggles the control. Okay, I think that's all that was said on that. The next is the UI, this is the last one, UIDatePicker. This is also really popular for when people create their own applications. They can create applications that set appointments or for their business. And so when you have a date picker, it is just an interface for managing the date and the time, allowing the users to specify a particular date quickly and efficiently. Slides executes code whenever the value of the selected date or time is changed. Okay, and then these are the properties, some of the properties of DatePicker. This here is the website under the Apple, or the web page under the Apple website that contains all the information or the developer documentation about the different views and controllers. So view controllers, in your book it says UIKit defines a special class that controls a view, sets up child views, controls what they display in response to the user interaction. Remember, this is called the UI view controller. Most commonly, each screen in an application is represented by a scene in a storyboard. So each screen or each little window is represented by a scene in a storyboard, and each scene in a storyboard is associated with a subclass of UI view controller, like text field or button. The associated UI view controller subclass is defined in a .swift file that holds all of the logic that controls the scene. Each UI view controller class has a view property that represents the parent view of the scene. So thinking back to the light project that we built in the first unit, the project has a single storyboard with one single scene, and that scene was linked to the UI view controller subclass called view controller. The light was toggled by adjusting the view property, and that view property is the same instance of UI view as the parent view of the scene in the storyboard. When you added a button to the screen, the button became a child view of the scene's main view. Okay, so the button added was a child. Then we added actions and outlets to the button, which define the view controller for that scene. So we're going to learn how to make complex view controllers in later lessons, but for now, we just want to be able to understand that each different type of screen that you see in an application, each different screen that you see, it's managed by a different type of view controller. So if you, when you start coding, remember that you can go to the Apple website so you can learn more about other views and other controls that are available. In your lab, you're going to go and look for different labels, image view, text views, table view, navigation bar, tab bar, buttons, etc., etc. And you're going to add a screenshot of each one of those that you see in different applications. So all this is doing is just making you aware of what, especially like sometimes you look at things and you didn't know that they were tables. And so most of us are familiar with buttons and text fields, but we don't, or labels, but we didn't know they were called labels, or we didn't know they were called text boxes, or we didn't know they were called a slider. So all that terminology you want to start developing. I remember the first time that I coded, but I never did user interfaces, and I started doing that with Visual Basic way back when, and all these words were so new to me, like text box and text fields and labels and things of that nature. So being familiar with the words, being familiar where, as you look at an application, start thinking about what views are here, what controllers are being used, what's happening, not just using the application. You're also going to be asked to open the simulator and navigate through the settings app to find examples of at least 5 views and at least 3 controls. Again, if you go back to lesson 1.8, that's going to help you with step 2 of your lab. And then it's going to ask you to do a few more things with step 2. And then there's some other tasks that you have to do for this lab. Okay guys, so this is the end of this lesson, and in the next lesson you're actually going to be displaying data, and it says you'll be using Interface Builder to create the beginning of an application called Hello that you can use to introduce yourself. You're going to plan out the content and begin building it by adding labels and a profile image. Sounds cool. All right. If you have questions, don't forget you can email me, and when you email me, I really appreciate you adding those screenshots and being really specific about your questions, because it makes me being able to get back to you much faster with an answer. So if you have a code question, take a screenshot of the code, let me know what it looks like, and it's really going to help me out. Close that.